Welcome to Connect, powered by the Fulton County Department of Senior Services. I'm your host, Dr. Pamela Rochelle. This show connects you to information, services, and programs that support healthy aging. Not only is healthy aging a priority for Fulton County government and the Department of Senior Services, it is the guide by which we provide the most relevant resources to assist our aging population to remain independent, healthy, and active. Can you name the hardest working muscle in your body? If you guessed heart, then you are correct. Roughly the size of a large fist and weighs between 10 to 12 ounces. The heart pumps blood throughout the body, supplying oxygen and nutrients to tissues and removes carbon dioxide and other waste. If you are not taking care of this important muscle, then you may be at risk for heart disease, including heart attack or stroke. However, there is hope for older adults who struggle with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, or other heart disease factors. Featured today on Connect is a local physician who will explain how the aging process impacts the heart and why good lifestyle choices can counteract risks of heart disease. Later in this show, we will share tips on adopting a healthy heart diet and give you useful exercise techniques that help to improve your heart. So stay tuned. We're back and glad to have you with us today on Connect, powered by the Fulton County Department of Senior Services. I'm your host, Dr. Pamela Rochelle. The American Heart Association leads a campaign every year to bring awareness to heart health. This is primarily due to the alarming statistics that heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. The good news is that this disease can be prevented. The modifiable or controllable risk factors for heart disease are high blood pressure, high cholesterol, cigarette smoking, diabetes, unhealthy diet, and lack of physical activity. Here today to talk about preventative methods and ways to improve your heart health is Dr. Nassary, Deputy Medical Director of the Fulton County Department of Health. Welcome to our show today, Dr. Nassary.
Thank you, Pamela, for having me.
So, can you explain a question that I always get, which is the difference between heart failure, heart attack, and cardiac arrest?
Yes, and that's a great question. So I'm going to start by talking about cardiac arrest because that's the easiest one to explain. So cardiac arrest simply means that your heart stopped beating. That's it. Your heart stopped. So if you try to say any kind of death results in cardiac arrest. So that is not actually a disease or an illness. It's a condition. Your heart has stopped. So that's cardiac arrest. And it can happen for many different reasons. You could be electrocuted. You could be overdosed with medication. You could be the victim of a gunshot wound. Multiple things can cause your heart to stop. So that's cardiac arrest. Heart failure is something that is, I think, very often misunderstood. So heart failure is something different, and I've actually experienced this myself. About 11 years ago, I got very severely ill and went into heart failure for about 6 months. And as a doctor, it was an amazing experience to actually go through that and see what my patients experience. It wasn't fun, but it was really amazing. So in heart failure, what happens is, you explained that the heart is a muscle, right? Well, that muscle becomes weak. So it is pumping and it's pumping blood, but it's not able to pump very well. Sometimes heart failure is permanent and sometimes it's reversible. Like in my case, thank God it was reversible. But your heart either becomes enlarged because you've used it, you've overused it, or in some cases abused it. And so the muscle becomes enlarged to the point where it can't fill up properly with blood, or it can become floppy. It can basically be stressed for so long and so hard that it's this floppy muscle that can't pump the blood properly. That's why people will sometimes say, oh, the doctor told me I have an enlarged heart. And that means that your heart is starting to get stressed, and you need to really start paying attention to those modifiable factors that you talked about. And then a heart attack is when basically part of your heart, because of a blockage in an artery, is not getting enough blood. And so that heart muscle is struggling to breathe and struggling to work because the blood flow that carries the oxygen isn't getting there. So a heart attack, if it's severe enough, can actually lead to heart failure or even cardiac arrest. I hope that was clear.
That was clear.
Okay.
That was clear. And I know that many of the participants in our programs hear these terms. And so
Yeah.
the way that you explained that was so very clear. So thank you for that. So are there actually prevention and management recommendations for heart health that you can share with our viewers?
Absolutely. And it's never too early to start. What I'm really happy about is in our school systems today, we actually start teaching kids about a lot of this very early on, to the point where my kids will lecture me about stuff don't use too much salt and things like that. But that's really good because we need to start learning that early. We call these things, basically, we say know your numbers. So there's certain numbers that can, as you're getting older especially, can really help you figure out where you are with your health. The first number is your blood pressure. Know your blood pressure. And that means even if you feel fine and you have no problems at all, when you go through the drugstore, the grocery store, whatever store you're in, put your hand in that machine that's free and just check your blood pressure. Because knowledge is power. There are so many people that walk around with no idea they have high blood pressure because they don't feel any different. And they have no idea that their blood pressure is actually, dangerously high. So get screened for that. Get somebody to check it or check it yourself. You can also go to a fire station. They'll do it for you. There are health fairs where they will check it for you. Know that number and then write it down and put it in your wallet. So when you do go see your doctor, your provider, you can tell them what it was. The other number you need to know is your A1C. So a lot of folks as they get older get screened for diabetes with a blood test called the A1C. And this will tell you whether you have diabetes, whether you have pre-diabetes, or whether hopefully you don't have diabetes at all. But as you get older, your risk for a lot of these things goes up. So you want to get checked for that. You want to know what your cholesterol is. Okay, so cholesterol is one of those things that contributes to you developing different problems like strokes, heart attacks, kidney problems, things like that. So you want to ask your provider, your doctor, hey, what was my last cholesterol? And was it good or not? Now, I have to say, sometimes doctors will be like, oh, they look at it, they think, oh, it looks all right. They may not bring it up with you, but ask. Ask what it was and have a conversation about that. And ask, what was my good cholesterol? What was my bad cholesterol? Because again, knowledge is really important. And then I would finally say, know your BMI or your weight. Okay, so basically ask, they weigh you, they sometimes do your height, sometimes they don't. But then just ask, say, well, what's my BMI and is it in a healthy range? And you might be surprised to find out that your BMI, even though you think you look great, you do look great, your whole family is the same size, you find out, gosh, my BMI is in the obese range. And that can be a real wake-up call. And nobody's saying you got to get it all the way down to normal, but you just have to be aware and pay attention to it.
Those are such great tips. I know that with our busy lives today, we run around and don't get much sleep quite often. Does sleep and lack of sleep, does that play into heart health in any way?
It does. So that's a very interesting question. We know that it does. What we don't know is why or how necessarily, but what we found is that if you sleep too much, that can be a problem. And if you sleep too little, that's an even bigger problem. So they recommend 7 to 8 hours of sleep a day. And what we found is as people get older and they, like you said, they get really busy, they're burning the candle at both ends, they're maybe waking up early to make breakfast for their kids or their grandkids, they're staying up late because that's the only time they have for themselves where they get to go online or read or watch TV, and they're shortchanging themselves by not getting enough rest, which also has been linked to obesity. So, I mean, what a great thing that, you could actually prevent gaining weight by just getting enough sleep.
Well, Dr. Nassery, thank you so much for joining me today. Are there any final tips or thoughts you want to share with our viewers?
Well, just that the one thing I didn't mention was smoking. I think we all know that quitting smoking is key to being healthy, but even cutting back helps. And the more times you try to quit, the more likely you are to quit. So just don't give up.
Well, Dr. Nassery, thank you so much for joining
It's
me
been
today.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Up next, exercise for a stronger you, a healthy heart, and diet tips. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect, powered by the Fulton County Department of Senior Services. I'm Dr. Rochelle. Our topic today is heart health, and one of the best ways to prevent heart disease is through physical activity. Fitness classes are offered at our neighborhood senior centers and our senior multipurpose facilities. Let's check in with one of our fitness coordinators at the Helene S. Mills facility and learn more about health and fitness programming. Hi, Sierra. Do you have any tips for our audience members regarding physical activity and exercise?
Hello, Dr. Rochelle. As a matter of fact, I do. A healthy heart requires your participation to take care of it, just like the battery life in a car. If you don't run it, the battery will become weak and expire. A healthy heart requires consistent movement to elevate the heart rate for a duration of time. The minimum 30 minutes to 75 minutes, depending on your fitness level, at least 3 to 4 times a week. Group fitness classes, walking, running, and swimming, biking are all forms of cardio conditioning to promote a healthy heart. Consult with your doctor before starting any exercise program.
Miss Simone, thank you for these great exercise tips. When we come back, we'll speak with a registered dietitian, so please stay with us. Welcome back. It's important to not only strengthen our hearts with exercise, but to supplement our bodies with a healthy diet. In studio today is a registered dietitian and nutritionist, Joe Engelbird from the Department of Senior Services. Welcome to our show today, Joe.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
So, Joe, what exactly is a healthy diet?
It's probably not much different than you have heard for many years. What has been said to be a heart-healthy diet for, well, as long as I can remember is, well, it's eat less of some things and eat more of others. And I kind of think of it as less and more. So, for example, eat less fat. That's pretty traditional, heart-healthy building block. If you're looking to eat heart-healthy, looking to trim some fat is a key component of that whole thing. Maybe another of the lesses is eat less sodium or salt. You know, a lot of the foods that are available in the grocery store or restaurants are heavy on the salt. So perhaps, you know, less salt, maybe eating at restaurants less often, or probably just cooking at home more will help to satisfy that need for less salt, which leads to a heart-healthy diet. And there are others. I mean, if you're talking about reducing fat and you take steps to reduce fat, you almost automatically reduce cholesterol. Now, cholesterol comes from animal products. So if you eat beef or even chicken or even maybe certain types of fish, you get cholesterol because it's just naturally in those animal products. So the best advice for a heart-healthy diet is to not to cut it out completely, but certainly minimize it as a food choice in your diet. So those things, and one that's become popular probably in the most recent few years is to eat less trans fat. Now that's become sort of a buzzword. And trans fat comes from things like shortening and, you know, those things that we used to use to make, you know, biscuits and pies and that kind of thing, which are very, very common for people to make in their homes. But what had been used over the years to cut back on the butter was what? Shortening. So now it's cut back on the butter and the shortening. So those are the lesses. And what are the mores? If you're trying to eat a heart-healthy diet, the lesses are obvious. What about the mores? Well, they're equally as obvious. The basic facts of a heart-healthy diet are eat more fruit. I mean, I ask sometimes my kids they're very little, what did you learn in school today? And they learn about eating heart-healthy foods, and one of the things they learn about is eating more fruit. And they come home and luckily they want to eat more fruit. And that's, again, something that's been a staple in our way of thinking about a heart-healthy diet for many, many years. And I think the good thing about that is we don't have to have a PhD in foodology, so to speak, to work that into our day-to-day life. We just have to remember what we learned in elementary school, kind of, sort of.
So, Joe, those are great tips. You talked about sodium, you've spoken of fat and cholesterol, trans fat, and you started to mention fruit. So are there specific fruit, and are there some other specific foods that our viewers should know about when they're thinking about planning their heart-healthy diet?
One of the things you talk about looking at very specific foods and ones that you might even call staples. And if you're going to go into your home and you're going to cook a meal, these are items that just should be there. The staples are ones that come from, and you may have heard it talked about like this, from the periphery of the grocery store. So what do you find there? Some of the best and healthiest foods are found on the outside of the grocery store, like fruits and vegetables. If you go into any market, one of the first things you see is these nice displays of fruits and vegetables that are there and available, and very often very, very inexpensive and easy to sort of work into your day-to-day diet. And so fruits and vegetables, as you go around the market, you might encounter things like fish. And so certainly eating more fish and more lean meats like chicken, even things like beef and pork, I don't think should be necessarily omitted, but certainly may not be a 5-day-a-week thing. So those are some of the ones that come to my mind. If your aim is to eat heart healthy, is to begin to look for those things and to integrate them when you go shopping on your menu and in the things that you eat as a part of your day-to-day diet.
So having the great foods that you need, shopping on the periphery, but I think that the preparation is important. So what can you tell us about the cooking tips? How do we cook in a way that's heart healthy?
Well, one of the other heart healthy things, sort of the bedrock principles of heart healthy eating, is vegetables. We kind of mentioned fruits, but vegetables is a key. And when you think about cooking, especially vegetables, and especially in sort of a southern style, which we love so much.
Yes.
It strikes me sometimes that we season those and we cook those in such a way that you don't even taste the vegetable. Like for a traditional dinner, and trust me, I've had this many times at my grandparents' house. Say green beans, for example. We put things in that as a manner of our traditional southern cooking, so much so that you don't even taste the vegetable. You taste the salt and the grease that floats on the top of it. So when it comes to cooking tips, one of the things that I encourage people to do is taste it first and season it second, because a lot of times the food itself has a great flavor without all the fuss. And sometimes I wonder if we've just gotten in the habit of that without thinking about, well, it's good for me, I bet it'll be good to me as well.
That's such a great tip. Do you have any additional tips that we could perhaps share with our viewers by way of a website?
A lot of the things that pertain to a heart-healthy diet are found at myplate.gov. It's a USDA, Department of Agriculture website, and you can find there just a host of articles and nutrition data, other information that would help you to sort of piece together a heart-healthy diet. What I think most people will find going to myplate.gov is, oh, I already know this. I understand this. And a lot of times I think at least my experience with, discussing this with folks is not necessarily sharing with them new information, but helping them to put it in such a way that they can use the information that they have.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for those great heart healthy tips.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
We'll be right back with closing thoughts. Thank you again for sharing your time with us today. We hope that this show provided you with a better understanding of heart disease, prevention, and management. I hope that you took notes from our experts, Dr. Nassary, Sierra Simone, and Joseph Engelbird, and that you will begin your exercise and meal preparation techniques today. It is our mission to improve the quality of life for older adults through the development and coordination of programs and supportive services that encourage independence and enhances overall well-being for seniors, their caregivers, and the community we serve. We welcome your feedback and the opportunity to speak with you further about these and more services. For more information about these programs and our department, please contact us at 404-613-6000 or email us at seniorservices@fultoncountyga.gov. You may also follow us on Twitter at FultonInfo. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Connect, powered by the Department of Senior Services.